Well, sure glad I spent all that time on Star Eater's scales testing and figuring out what the hell was going on with them, only for them to get changed a week later. Guess I'll just make another video. In the most recent patch, Star Eater scales got buffed. I'm not sure. First off, the whole non-super damage situation was a bug. If you recall, the boots not only buffed your super, but also buffed your weapon damage for the same duration, and your grenades. I really was wondering why this was the case, as it's not noted anywhere on the exotic, and turns out that was bugged, so I'm glad I didn't go too insane overthinking that fact. Sadly, this does mean that a top tree shadow shot is now completely unaffected by Feast of Light. I really don't consider this to be a buff or a nerf, because I figured that something was going to be done about this feature at some point, and it's tough to say if something was buffed or nerfed when it was never intended to work that way in the first place. Was this feature really a big deal when used in a normal manner? No, not really, but this is a bug fix to prevent any sort of issues going forward. Star Eater Scales was also disabled for the World First Second VOG race as a precautionary measure to make sure that they wouldn't, ruin anything. They have returned, but now they are asking for more orbs, requiring 8 orbs to fully max out your damage potential. At first, I thought this was a bit much. Doubling the requirements to get the same effect meant that you very rarely proc the effect at full force. Who is collecting 8 extra orbs in this game where most supers will just obliterate anything in their way anyway? It would make it almost completely impractical to use during more difficult content, signaling the way for the return of the classic Hunter exotics. But it turns out that the potency of the effect was also buffed in response. At 4 stacks of Feast of Light, I thought you said 8, Datto. Why is it 4? Why is it 4? I'll cover that in a second. At 4 stacks of Feast of Light, you are now looking at a 90% damage boost to your super, up from 60 at maximum stacks previously. At 1 stack, it is 22.5%, 45% for 2 stacks, and 67.5% for 3 stacks. But what's up with the whole 4 stacks? Well, in order to get 1 stack, you need to collect 2 orbs. However, each orb is technically worth 11.25% bonus damage on your super. So if you collect 1 orb, you're not going to have a buff on your screen, but your super's damage will be increased by 11.25%, and this includes every half step along the way. That means at 5 orbs, your damage will be at around 56% bonus damage, whereas previously it was 60% for 4 orbs. 1 more orb gets you basically back to where you were. Oh, but wait, there's more! Because as I was writing this video and editing it and literally hitting the export button, community manager Cozmo posted on Reddit that everything that I just said, is also actually a bug, and that'll be fixed sometime in the future. Cozmo says that, quote, when the bug is fixed, 8 stacks will still provide a higher bonus than the original max stack bonus, and the 4 stacks will be a slightly smaller bonus than the original max stacks damage bonus, end quote. Gonna put that through my translator real quick, beep, boop, 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 boop. And I'm going to interpret this to mean that the 8 stack full bonus will give somewhere in between 60 and 90% bonus damage on your super. Let's just call it 80% for the time being. And the 4 stack will give slightly less than the 60% damage bonus. Let's call it 40%, so that way we have a nice even 10% damage bonus per orb, although I realize that 40% is a bit more than slightly below 60%, but it is slightly below the current 45%. Is any of that correct? Honestly, I'm not sure. It could stay exactly the same. It could get nerfed down. I don't know. Numbers would really be great. Fortunately, the second half of this video just kind of discusses the decision-making process between Scales and Nighthawk, and not specifically numbers. Today was supposed to be my day off. Here I am redoing my entire video. All good. Thanks. There is also currently a bug with the boots where even if you are at maximum stacks of Feast of Light, you will continue to collect orbs, having them do, I assume, nothing. I am hoping that this also gets fixed soon, as it is ruining some of the enjoyment of the exotic. Did I have a lot of trouble pronouncing that sentence? Yes, I did. So where the hell are we at now? Buff, nerf. Well, with this newly presented information that this change is also a bug and that it'll be nerfed at some point, I'm gonna say that we're more on the side of nerf than buff. Before this new information, I would have said that we were pretty close to break even, but without knowing the new values, I can only make assumptions. Ultimately, Cozmo has relayed the info that the goal of the change to 8 stacks was to increase the reward for risking losing your stacks via death to try to get to 8 stacks for maximum damage. But I can tell you, even with my very limited playtime, that the risk to get to 8 stacks is already kind of on the edge of not being super worth it outside of very specific circumstances. And now that's being nerfed, bug fixed, to be an even lower value. Part of what I liked about the previous version is that it actually felt feasible to attain in a raid or a GM scenario to get that maximum effect. My vibe currently is, I don't know if this bug fix is gonna work out too well from the bonus super damage point of view. I ran a couple of Master Nightfalls with Star Eaters and Celestial. One thing that I definitely undervalued was how quickly you can get a super with Star Eater, especially if you're running with an Ursa Titan or even a Well of Radiance. The double orb energy is no joke over a long period of time. But I was often stressed by the fact that I felt like I had to have some Feast of Light stacks before I felt comfortable using my super, because half of the exotic is getting that bonus damage. In one run that I did, I got my super 2 minutes into the strike, but I didn't actually use it until 5 minutes in, because in my mind, I needed to have some stacks before I was okay with using my super in order to not waste it. In reality, I could have just used it, made some orbs for my team, and probably gotten another super in the time that it took me to use it just once. 3 Golden Gun crits still generates 6 orbs for your team, which is really good. It's a tough mental barrier to break. I imagine a lot of people are going to have the mindset that they need stacks for a super to be considered successful. But even when I had the bonus feast stacks, I wasn't very impressed with the damage output, which is why my vibe is currently on the side of just going back to Nighthawk. It took at least 2 Golden Gun shots with 3x stacks to put a chunk of damage into an unstoppable champion, and I'm only 15 levels underneath it in this clip, whereas in GM, I'll be 25 levels. Not that Nighthawk is one-shotting champions or anything 15 levels under, even with Breach and Clear, which is a 30-something% debuff on a target for those of you watching in the future. Also, yeah, if you die, you lose all your stacks, and dying is somewhat common in Master and GM content compared to everything else. You're now asking that I risk 8 orbs in Master and GM to maybe have the ability to kill a champion with my Golden Gun? I don't know about that one, Chief. Nighthawk, on the other hand, did not have that same pressure. I knew that if I had a super and I stunned a champion, as soon as it got to around half health, maybe a little bit higher, I could pop my super, blast them, create a couple orbs, and get a chunk of super energy back. There was no thinking about stacks. There was just, I have super, time to shoot gun. And that is a more liberating feeling. Not only that, but it's much easier to pull off as opposed to looking around for a bunch of orbs on the ground and potentially dying as a result. Also, again, Nighthawk, only 1 shot compared to 3 shots. You can take your time lighting up your shot as opposed to Star Eater, where you need to nail 3 in a row. Sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's not. Ultimately, I think that if you're going to use Star Eaters in a Master or GM setting, you need to break that mental barrier of thinking that you always need to have stacks for your Golden Gun or any super for it to be successful. Take advantage of that bonus super energy per orb that you get and just become an orb battery for your team and occasionally have bonus damage on your super. Sure, if you're able to put yourself in a position to get a full stack of Feast of Light, maybe anything where you have a raid rally flag, or maybe something like a Templar where there's a bunch of extra orbs on the ground before you start, then you go for that big time damage. But otherwise, don't pressure yourself into trying to get that maximum stack effect every single time. 4 orbs is only a minor damage decrease compared to what it used to be. 6 orbs is actually a buff in terms of damage compared to previously. If you want to use Nighthawk, that's also totally fine. I think the choice is just really going to come down to your mindset and simply what you want to be doing during gameplay. I think Nighthawk is going to be easier to pull off, whereas Star Eater Orb Battery could have higher gains for a bit more work. However, I will ask that Bungie reconsider fixing this new bug, as I am currently of the belief that another nerf will push the exotic outside of the realm of what a lot of people would believe to be good enough to warrant using in endgame content. That's all from me on the new Star Eater Scales buff nerf. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.